All right, hi everyone. My name is Dan Linna. I'm a professor at Michigan State University College of Law, and I'm also the director of Legal R&D, the Center for Legal Services Innovation there, also an adjunct professor at University of Michigan Law School. Really excited to be here today. I was at the first event 3 years ago, and we just keep growing every year, and it's really exciting to see. So I'm going to make the best use of my 10 minutes and jump right in. I'm going to be talking about measuring legal innovation, and it was really exciting to find out that Jim Sandman was here, because the impetus for this talk really came from a talk he gave about 1.5 years ago at the Future Law Conference at Stanford. And he was talking about 10 ways to create more legal tech adoption in the industry. And one of the things he talked about is that we need to be ranking law firms not just on revenue and profit, but on innovation, and are they using technology? And at the time I thought, wow, that's a great idea. Someone's gonna jump on that. Someone's gonna do something with that. But 6 months ago or so, or I guess back in April, I was at the Future Law Conference, and Jim was there again speaking, and he talked about some similar themes, and this came up again, and no one had still jumped on it. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to figure out a way to spin up some sort of a minimum viable product in a short period of time so that we can start trying to get a sense of what innovation is actually going on in the legal industry. All right, so what better way to do a project than to try to apply the innovation framework that I'm saying lawyers and law firms should be adopting, right? We're not going to boil the ocean. We're not going to try to perfect the product. We're going to start trying to, what's the easiest way we can start getting some information and then keep iterating, right? Kind of like lean startup or plan, do, study, act for lean thinking. So what is really the problem here, right? Clients want to know, and they should want to know, whether their lawyers are using technology and if they're innovating. Law firms and legal departments right now are gathering this information. The legal departments want to know which law firms are innovating. The law firms want to know what their competitors are doing, right? So some of this is already being created in the silos of the different law firms. Legal startups want to know. I'm sure there are a bunch of people in this room who want to know, who are building products right now and would like to know what are the different law firms doing as far as document assembly systems and technology assisted reviews, things like that. Law schools. We have a handful of law schools that are doing things. Brooklyn Law School right here that started the legal hackers movement. My school at Michigan State, Stanford, we just heard Fordham, Chicago, Kent, right? There's a handful of law schools that are doing stuff in this space. Law students need to know this, right? Even if their law schools aren't doing things, if you're going to a law firm, a big law firm, you should know. Are they innovating? Are they responding to what's happening in the marketplace right now, right? So we've got legal aid organizations should know as well. I think we're seeing a lot of convergence in the marketplace where the same kind of problems we're trying to solve in law firms are similar problems that legal aid organizations are trying to solve, so we can all learn from each other in this marketplace. And all lawyers should know, regulators and governments want to know this information. So how do we put it together? So in phase one, again, I said I wanted to try to put together a minimum viable product. So the first thing I'm doing is putting together a catalog of law firm innovations. Now some of this stuff is out there, right? People write articles and they say, oh, here are 4 or 5 examples, and there are a couple of sites they've pulled together a few more examples, but there's no one place you can go to and say, what sort of innovative things are law firms doing? What kind of products are they building? Expert systems? Have they created an innovation entity, right? We hear about Denton Nextlaw Labs a lot and a couple others, but we don't really know what does the landscape actually look like. So let's capture all that and put it in one place. And then I'm going to do searches of law firm websites. I'm going to do Google searches, and I'm going to look for terms indicating innovation. And this is why the sticky notes were being passed around, is because, again, this is an MVP, and I want to hear your feedback. And I'm going to talk about some of the weaknesses of doing this initial phase in this way. And I'd love to hear your ideas on how to improve this, and I'd love to have your support when I roll this out, because I know there's going to be some criticisms of it, and I'm going to try to raise as many of the criticisms as I can and talk about how it's going to get better in future iterations. Phase 2, requesting information from law firms. Phase 3, surveying customers, maybe going to Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, ACC, Legal Ops, and other client orgs. These are my research assistants who have been helping me do this work: Sean Acosta, Andrew Burgess, Jameson Joyce, and Anita Westron. And they're all on Twitter, of course, where all legal innovators should be. And so one of the things that I want to really make clear is this is not about ranking law firms, at least not at this phase, right? And the idea of an index is to help us find information. Where do we look? Where can we see what law firms are doing and what's happening in the marketplace? Now, later iterations, we may get to something that is a ranking, but right now, we don't quite have enough information to be able to rank law firms. And then the catalog, again, just trying to create a complete list of what's actually happening out there. All right, so Catalog version 1.0. These are innovations that have been implemented, not experiments. There are legal tech companies that are working with law firms and trying different stuff. That's great. We need that. Law firms need to do more of that. But there's too much of that going on to try to catalog at this point. This is implemented products, things that have gone live. And I talked about some of the existing resources that are out there: Jordan Furlong, Ron Friedman, the Financial Times, College of Law Practice Management, Legal Innovation Indices. There's a few things out there. I have to give thanks to Carla Swansberg at Blake Castles and Graydon in Toronto. They provided some research for us to kind of seed this list of the catalog of innovations. And when I launch this on the website, we're going to have a form so people can, so law firms, anyone who thinks that, hey, we're doing something, we've got something substantive, it should be on your index, that I'm going to add it to it there. So let me show you, this is going to be on Tableau Public, and let me show you what it's going to look like. And now again, this is the first version of this, and I'm going to need to get a designer involved to help me make it look even nicer. Right now it's too much like, you know, the engineer's version of this front end here where you just have the information. All right, so the idea is you've got the different law firms listed. There are 202 of these innovations in here so far. One of the things I've been adding is a lot of books and other things will say, oh, well, Ackerman's doing something innovative. They've got the Ackerman Data Law Center. Well, that's helpful, but can we put this in? Can we tell, is it a consulting service? Is it services? Is it a product? Is it an expert system? What's the area of law, right? In the case of Ackerman, it's privacy and data security, right? Is it a partnership? Yes, it is. Who are they working with? Well, in that case, it's Thomson Reuters and Neota Logic, and then link to every one of their sites, right? So that you can just, so we'll have information about what's out there. And no, the nice thing about Tableau is there's lots of different ways to sort it. You can say, just show me all the expert systems that are in this tool, right? What are people building? What are they doing? What are the different law firms? What's happening out there? And I'm going to try to come up with, and of course, people who want to dig in are going to be able to sort that information in all sorts of different ways. I've got a few other static charts and things like that where you can see, right, how much of this is about artificial intelligence, and when it's artificial intelligence, is it services, is it products, right? We don't have anything that's around consulting and artificial intelligence. Tableau is a really great tool to be able to break this all down. You know, got all the innovation, the incubators that different law firms have set up and things like that. It's really important. I think we generalize a lot about what's happening in the legal industry, and we need to start getting a lot more specific. We tend to generalize, well, lawyers should be doing this, lawyers should be doing that. Like if you're a small town lawyer in northern Michigan, you're in a much different spot than if you're a lawyer in New York City, right? So we need to start talking about practice groups and types of law, and that's what I'm attempting to do here too, so we can get a sense of what's happening in these different areas. And then jurisdiction. And it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of anecdotes I hear about the UK firms are kind of ahead of where the US firms are at. I mean, the early data here would suggest that, right? Nearly 50% of the innovations that we're seeing are coming from UK law firms. And we'll see when we get this fully populated and get input from more people what the landscape really looks like. Okay, I want to then now talk about the searches that we did for the remaining amount of my time. So if you want to do an innovation index, the first thing you have to do is identify what categories are you going to search for when you're setting up the searches. Based on some research I've been doing and on the articles I've been writing, and this is based in part on the curriculum we've established and also looking at corporate legal operations consortium on the standards they've been developing and things like that, came up with these different categories and search terms to use and run through a Google site search to find out what kind of hit numbers we get. Alternative fees, right? If you're an innovative law firm, you should be talking about alternative fee, value billing, value-based billing. Project management, right? You should be talking about project management on your website to your customers. Process improvement or an innovation framework, so are you doing design thinking, lean thinking, or something like that? Knowledge management. Automation basics, right? I think artificial intelligence is also this soft, nebulous area that we need to start, especially people in this room. We should start helping people better understand all the tools in this space, right? Differentiating between document assembly and expert systems and artificial intelligence. We've got some categories here. So we got basics, expert systems, document automation and such. Data analytics, artificial intelligence, legal operations, proactive law, right? Not just waiting for problems to happen, but being proactive. And then blockchain. Blockchain is not really a legal service delivery tool, but it's just kind of an interesting thing to add to this search to see what's happening in law firms. We looked at 260 law firms, the AmLaw 200, Canadian Top 30, and Global 100. So there's some overlaps. You end up at 260 law firms. And then here's some of the weaknesses, right? The terms are a weak proxy for what law firms are actually doing. There's a gap between what firms say they're doing and what they're actually doing. And that kind of cuts both ways, because there's some law firms who are saying they're doing a lot. You scratch the surface, they're not really doing much. There are other law firms who aren't talking about this stuff, and they're actually doing a lot, right? So just keep that in mind. Content, if a law firm hosts blogs on their website and has other content on the website, they would have a higher number of hits, right? So one could ask, should I be bringing in blogs for the searches? False positives, so if you do a search and it picks up project management, but it's an article about what clients are doing, things like that. False negatives, I can't use certain common terms that appear too frequently. You can't just search for technology and innovation out of context. Right, so you see a few of these other things. And I think the main thing is that real innovation requires organizational change and continuous improvement in culture, right? And we're not measuring that with these things here. So let me just show you then what we have so far on the searches the team has come up with. So we've got like thousands of hits that have came up on the different firms, and I'm not releasing the firm names yet because we're still fine-tuning this, but this is going to go live in a little over a week. So you end up with thousands of hits on these different categories, these 10 different categories. And then to make sense of really, some of them, for example, if you have a blockchain practice group and it's in your menu bar on your website, it'll appear then across the whole site and you'll get 1,000 hits. So what I want to do is try to scale it so we end up with a 10-point scale, and you'll get a score for each of these categories from a 0 to 1. So the best you'd do overall would be a 10, but you'll be scaled 0 to 1 in each one. And then, so one of the interesting things, again, that come out of this is that is looking at jurisdictions. And this is international in the sense that we've tried to pick up top global firms. But we're seeing a lot more hits in the UK firms. Now, this isn't comparing apples to apples, though, 100%, because we've got the AmLaw 200, so we go a little bit deeper. But in the UK, it's the top firms that are picked up in the Global 100. But this gives us some insight, some actual data behind these anecdotes that the UK firms are ahead of where the US law firms are, at least on that measure. So if you have any comments for me, suggestions, that's why those sticky notes were passed around. I'd love to hear your ideas. I'd love to hear your criticisms and how to make this better. And great to be here again. I look forward to talking to everyone and meeting everyone. Thanks.
Okay, up next is Benjamin from our Nigeria chapter. Is Ben here? Oh, there he is.
Okay. Good day, everybody. I am well introduced there. I'm Olumba Chukwemeka Benjamin, but you can just call me Chuks to make the name short. I am from Nigeria. I am the organizer of Imo Legal Hackers. It's a new chapter that started in August, actually. Thank you. Thank you. It's a new chapter that started in August. So we are 1 year by July this year. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, actually, I don't want to talk about so much about what we're doing in the legal space as far what we have done, what we've not done, but actually I'm here just to tell a story. So take it as simple as telling a story. So in August, I was introduced to the legal hackers idea and the notion of using technology to help what we're doing in the legal space, like practice of law and all whatnot. So when I was introduced earlier, it took a lot from my side. That's why I want to tell this story, so that I met a couple of persons yesterday's dinner, and they were talking about starting up their new chapter. So from my story, you can take some clue as to what you can do and how you can help your process. So when first they told me about legal hackers, I tried talking to people about legal hackers, and the reaction was, legal, yes, but hackers, God, what is it doing with the name? And I tried meeting some notable persons like judges, like very senior lawyers who I feel will influence even the young ones in coming into what we do. So when I was talking to them, it was actually during the time of this guy, Guccifer. I know most of you know him. So when you talk to them, they will be like, what is he trying to do? Is he trying to hack us? Is he trying to go into our space? So that made me, actually, Jameson did a lot trying to explain to me what legal hackers is, our own perspective to it, hacking in our own perspective, what it's all about. But it drove me into a couple of research to find out on my own what is it all about, what it is all about. Now, I know most of you know more than me what legal hackers is and what hacking is actually, but permit me at the risk of repetition to share with you some of the things I found out. Like, this is the question I asked myself. So if I try to get answers to these questions, and it helped me in actually addressing this issue. So I looked at what this guy in his public offer that I suppose that should be his first public offer that he made, and what he said about hackers actually. Yeah, I know Techno Railroad Club is something you can look at when you want to find out what hacking is all about actually, but this guy is more recent and more in line, and it helped me in my argument with people as to what hacking is, especially in Nigeria. Now, permit me to share some of these things with you. This is in his letters to prospective shareholders of his initial public offer. He said this: the word hackers has an unfairly negative connotation from being portrayed in the media as people who break into computers. And in reality, hacking just means building something quickly and testing the boundaries of what can be done. Actually, this gave me a leeway, you know. I was able to start doing something differently, talking to people differently about what hacking is all about. And again, he said this: the hacker's way is an approach to building that involves continuous improvement and iteration. Hackers believe that something can be better and that nothing is ever complete. They just go to fix it, often in the face of people who say actually that it's impossible or contented with a status quo. Actually, it's actually helped me, because usually people ask you, what do you want to change? What do you want to do differently? And I keep telling them that there's a lot actually that we can do in our space, there's a lot that we can change and stuff. So this is what he said again. Okay, I don't have much time, but you can read it up. It's here on the screen. So after reading this, I realized for the first time that actually in Nigeria, even though we've not been doing it in the name of hacking, that there is hacking in our space too. In Nigeria, even though outside pure legal hackers chapter, that we just established, they've been doing a couple of things that I consider that they are hacking, even though not purely technological. Now now I got this idea that this is from the definition, my own concept of hacking, is the introduction of hackers' culture or hackers' way of doing things into legal ecosystem. So this is my own definition of legal hackers, what they stand for, what they intend, what they are doing, and what they will keep doing. So I looked at this. When I told you that we've been hacking, when I was called to the bar in 2007, the system was like this. You file your statement of claims, and the other man will file his statement of defense after the time, and then the other man will file his, he will now call his witnesses, and on and on and on, and things kept, dragging. But when I was called to bar, I saw this for the first time. Front-loading system. This is a system where I bring in all my statement of claim with list of witnesses, with S-bits, everything. You move it into the court at once. The man who will find the statement of defense will move everything in at once. So when the witness comes into the witness box, you don't start asking questions and questions again. He will simply adopt what he had done, his witness, what he stated in his witness deposition. So it abridges the time. It makes practice far more shorter. So this is an innovation in our space too. It wasn't there before, but this is in the general sense. Then I looked at something like the pre-trial conference. The pre-trial conference actually came with a front-loading system, because there you narrow down issues, interlocutory applications are taken. Because on the originally, that before this time, we have a system where midway, people will bring in us all kinds of applications, interlocutory, injunction, this application, and that slows down the system. So they brought this in to take care of that and to narrow down issues. In fact, at pre-trial conference, a judge can actually say that you don't have a defense to this matter at pre-trial conference stage. Then we have the multi-door courthouse, which was introduced actually in Lagos. The multi-door courthouse actually came with these people too, because the multi-door courthouse is a system where you have an alternative. You must not litigate. You can't go for alternative dispute resolution. So that is what actually the multi-door courthouse provided. It's equally an innovation in our space. Then we have admissibility of electronic evidence. It used to be war before. It used to be based on what a judge decides or how the judge perceives it. But under the new amendment of the Evidence Act, this one was quite recently, 2011, they made electronic evidence actually admissible in almost all ramifications. So when I saw this, I said, yes, that actually we've been doing innovations, we've been hacking in our system, trying to improve the system. But I feel the core of legal hackers particularly is really, this can be accommodated within what we are doing as innovations, but the core are the technologically driven innovations. That is the core of legal hacking. So for me to actually do anything within our space, which I consider that what we are doing, what we've done so far in our space is quite modest. So for me to do this, I decided to consider or put together these areas like, we look at legal education, which involves the process of training a young lawyer, arming him with the tools, getting him to know how the different arms of government works and how he applies what he has learned to the practice of law. I will equally bring in ICT. ICT here, I'm referring to generally something like the internet, since things that will help us have access to more information. Then I look at legal practice. This is what a lawyer does actually. So from this tray, I can bring out things that you will appreciate are things that we're doing in our own space. That's why I said it is modest. Now, I just want to say this. In 1999, that was when the civilian government came into Nigeria. That was when the policy, adoption of ICT, came in for the first time. I feel I don't have much time, so let me just go straight to this. Okay, this is what we are doing within our place. This is Law Pavilion. Law Pavilion is a landmark achievement in the field of legal technology in Nigeria. For the first time, Law Pavilion came in. It did so much in the area of law reporting. It did so much in the area of legal research, and they also have a couple of management tools that helps lawyers in what they're doing. We have Legalpedia. Legalpedia is more of an online law reporting, compilation of this law report. We used to have a lot of manual law reports. You come to lawyers' chamber, it will be stacked with a lot of law reports. But along the way, these people came in and they've changed the way, the number, the volume, what you can actually manage, what you can actually bring within your office to do, and how you can access them anytime, any day. Now, Nigerian Law School e-handbook, when I went to the Nigerian Law School in 2007, 2006, 2007, there was nothing like this. They were all manual books. But today, we have things like this, like the Nigerian Law School e-book that we young lawyers are now using. Then we have Part Legal, my time is up, DocSign. DocSign is today we have e-commerce, e-transaction, e-this, e-that. This will enable you execute contracts online with ease without doing it the manual way. And there are legislations that are made to back up and guarantee its authenticity. So I feel that's it for us now. So I love you so much. Thank you very much.
Whoa, wait till. All right, up next, Suzanna from our Dubai chapter.
Hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here, and especially, you can't even imagine that what we feel now being here in the center of the whole business and buzzing of the legal tech things, as we came from Dubai, and this is just seems to be the most innovative city in the world. If I'll tell you, and just imagine the world where everyone is doing their business, there is huge skyscrapers and everyone is like, we are doing good. In the same time, we have a government which is, how to say that in a more appropriate way, in a stone age. They are properly in a stone age of development, but they're trying to keep it up, and they have e-government now. They have e-something the same way as everybody trying to do that. They have huge investments in all of this, except legal, which is really a pain for us because we are one of the startups there in the legal tech. So we founded legaladviceme.com, which is the only one legal tech startup in the whole Middle East region for now, like being that big at least. Last year, we've received an award from the Hague Institute of Innovation and Law, and this is how we get to know that we are the only one. So they just said, guys, we've been trying to find the competitor to you, or at least those whom you can, cooperate and make this thing bigger, or somehow being innovative together and make bring the community in, and they get to know that we were the only one. So our platform is helping lawyers to be more efficient in their job, and they are helping lawyers to get in touch with the clients. And I think it's worth telling the story of how this all came to my mind. I used to work as a lawyer in Dubai for a bit more than 4 years before I started thinking that there is a huge gap in the legal system. So first of all, 90% of the population in Dubai, or in the Middle East in general, 4 countries where foreigners constitute the majority of the population are in the Middle East. In Dubai, or in the UAE in general, the big cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, 90% are expats. Like, all the people that I know from my community, from people in the business, from people in industries, they all came there for a time. Most probably they will spend there like 3 years and then they will leave, or they live there for 20 years, but it's still permanent place for them. Government is trying to support the local population, which is only 10%, by providing them with special conditions for their business. So for example, if you want to establish the law firm, you have two ways of doing that. If you want to litigate, if you want to go to the court, you have to be a local, like you have to own the UAE passport. And you have to be 100%, like the company will be 100% owned by the local, which means that the lawyer in ahead of this might have the poor education, or even with the good education with the vision, but in the same time he will not do the job. So the job will be done by those who just came there for a time. They are not that experienced in the UAE law, which is changing all the time because the country is really developing. With all of that in mind, we have also a language barrier. Like, yes, most of the people in our country do speak Arabic, but when the law is in Arabic and it's translated into English, there are so many typos and not the right understanding of legal terms which were translated from Arabic into English. And you won't find the English version like open. So you would have to Google it, and probably you will find small pieces of that from different sources. In the end, what you will get is that you don't know nothing and you need a lawyer. And then you go to a lawyer and there is another problem. First, to find the law firm. Like, I've met my clients, and before, I didn't realize that before I started talking to my clients, asking them what would their way to find me in a law firm. Because mainly when you Google anything in the UAE or in the Middle East, like your problem, you will most probably find law firms themselves. No faces, no names. And just for you to understand, we have in the UAE more than 700 plus companies, law firms, right? But 46% of those companies don't have a website. You even won't find them. Like with all the passion that you feel like you need a lawyer, you will Google it, you will find top 20 law firms. And most of the people, they cannot afford it. So we have this fear of lawyers as sharks who were taking money for minutes, and it's better to avoid them. So when the clients came to our office, they were all the time constantly asking each second, how much does this will cost us to be here? Or, how much my case will ended up being in the end, or right now, how much I have. And I bombarded with all these questions, I just start asking them questions as well, like why do they have this feeling of lawyers? Why do they actually talk about lawyers that way? And they said, we can't find any specific lawyer with our nationality, for example, with those who speak our language, those who have explained us things that are done here in a human. I said, okay, how did you find me then? She said that was the huge, long way of finding the lawyer who first interested in their case, second knows how to solve that case, and third is ready to help at least with the first free consultation. She said that she find like, I was trying to be innovative in the way I'm talking to clients, and I was new in the country and I needed to build my name, so I basically go to Quora and just started replying to legal questions, helping people over there, just seeing what questions do people usually have and how can I help them. So they saw my question, my answer on one of the forums like that, and they just contacted me for more. And when we had a consultation, they feel more comfortable, and then they, proceed with the cases. In the same time, this is the path that most of the clients of the law firm have to go through if you are not a big corporate, or if you have like a big pack of the money that you're okay throwing on the law firms. So most of the time, we feel ourselves too far from our clients. So they don't know how to market their platforms. They don't have any technologies involved. And if you will imagine that being a lawyer or being a legal consultant, which is the second option, when you can own the law firm yourself, but in the same time you cannot litigate, you will do only the documents and everything apart from litigation, which is like a really tiny little gap slab that you can do. Lawyers, the local lawyers, have to bring the paper in hands to the courts still, and there is no litigation process. You just here you have judges in front of you. You have some of the disputes. You have a talk, and you can, if you will go by yourself, you can at least talk to the judge. Judge will never ever talk to you in the courtroom if you are not a local lawyer. So you will be standing there as just a matter of fact that you are there, just for them to put the click on you that just said that you were there, and you listen to it. It was all in Arabic. Most of the time, people do not understand what the talk was about. But that's it. This is how we came to understanding that we need something. We started searching. There was nothing. And now we started legaladvice.me.com, where everyone with any legal issue in mind, they just can go there, and our lawyers from 9 different countries within the Middle East region can address the issue and get at least initial understanding of how to solve their problem. And this is huge for now, and we are handing over with the Legal Hackers chapter soon. We just started a couple of weeks ago our chapter in Dubai, and we hope that with this movement we are going to change the scale and the face of the whole Middle East region as a scary point of Sharia law and other things that most of the people don't know. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
So let's move on from this part of the program. Since they did videos, we can save it for another time this afternoon. So up next is our Kyiv chapter, Dmitry, Denise, and Helen.
Hello to everyone. My name is Denis Ivanov. I'm from Kyiv Legal Hackers chapter, and I want to tell you about some history of burning of Ukrainian legal chapter. Sorry, that's better. So 2 weeks ago we launched the website. You can see it here. You can visit. Free visit and learn more about Kyiv Legal Hackers. And it all began at the April 5th, it was the first Ukrainian chatbot conference where Valentyn Pivovarov, this guy, Valentyn, hello, proposed us, these four guys, to make a difference, to make new innovating, to join the community which called Legal Hackers. We don't know about what it's all about, but he said it will be something blow mind, because we can change mind, we can change legal system, we can change our country by adopting his proposition. So we decided to make a grand opening in Odessa. It's situated on Ukraine, on Black Sea, very nice city. We invited by online, by offline advertising, and we're supposed to have 10 or 15 visitors to our meetup which called Jurisprudence 2.0 Evolution. But when we came here, we have more than 100 visitors. So it was really a really terrific situation. We have cake, branding cake. So everyone who was on that meetup got some piece of Legal Hackers inside of himself. Till the August 5th, for now, we have a little bit statistic. So we done first legal tech hackathon in Eastern Europe. We made 3 successful legal tech events in core Ukrainian cities such as Odessa, Lviv, and Kyiv. We have 5 partners which I can call even friends, not only the partners. More than 10 media references such as TV, radio, blogs, podcasts, and many other. More than 20 legal projects become from the stage of idea into the stage of MVP or even beta test products are now working, which was born at the hackathon. Now we have more than 200, for now, more than 200 lawyers, which are now in the community in Telegram group. It's a messenger for speaking. And more than 700 Facebook followers are now in the Kyiv Legal Hackers on Facebook. And now I want to give a word to Dmitry.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Good. Yeah, great. So my name is Dmitry. I'm innovating justice agent at the Hague Institute for Innovation in Law. It's called HIL. And I'm also happy to be part of Legal Hackers movement in Ukraine. So what we wanted to present you is just a small roadmap of legal tech in Ukraine. We divided it in 4 pieces, so it would be easier to comprehend, and then we gave each piece like a few main examples, right? So we have startups, we have companies like legal tech or legal tech companies or legal tech labs. I don't know if you know, but Ukraine is one of the biggest outsourcers of IT solutions all over the world. So we have a lot of IT guys, and we also have a lot of big justice problems. So I think that's a perfect match. Then we have law firms that are innovating in-house, and they also do spin-offs. That's also a characteristic of Ukrainian scene. We have a lot of spin-offs from law firms. And then we have communities and accelerators. So I think altogether it makes it quite robust. So I'll start with the startups. We have more or less 50, I would say. During 2 last years, we've identified about 100 innovators who do something in sphere of law, and then we shortlisted about 50. So we have about 50 legal tech startups in Ukraine that are live with teams and doing something. So I'll mention just 3. So Legal Alarm, this is the best startup according to the Hague Institute for Innovation in Law for Hill. This is a SOS button where you can, if you're detained or you have some situation where you would like immediately to talk to a lawyer, you can just press the button. But which is more important, if you cannot answer, right? If you're detained or something happened, lawyer will not gonna reach you, and he will immediately get a message with your GPS coordinates, so he could come over and give you an advice. So it will constantly constantly giving you the coordinates. It would also send a Twitter message and messages to your friends and family that you're in danger. I'm happy to say that Legal Alarm going to be presented at TechCrunch Disrupt this September at the Ukrainian Pavilion. Then we have Cryptonomica. These guys are doing online arbitration and online identification, like ID. This is also exciting. They are about to do ICO, initial coin offering. That's their purpose for now. And then we have a very special law firm that has a chatbot in the center of the law firm, right? So the initial conversation and initial advices will be given by a chatbot. And then if you need further advice and to answer your specific questions, you have a back office of 7 top-notch lawyers that will give you answer to your specific questions. But in the very beginning, you're communicating with a chatbot. So this is the first part, and I would like now to pass the word to Helen. She'll tell a little bit more about tech companies. Right? Helen, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Helen, and I represent company Legal Zakon, and I'm also in Kyiv Legal Hackers. The first company mentioned, Liga, it's the first IT provider that. Okay. The first company is Liga. It's the company which was first IT company provided products for lawyers. So the first product was research databases like LexisNexis, but it was local, so we work only with local laws and legislation. After that, they come to decision to make more products, for instance, analytics of court decisions and monitoring of counter-agents and so on. So it's one of the biggest companies that started to work 25 years ago, and it's also a representative of International Legal Tech Association in Ukraine. The second, it's LexNet.io. Maybe someone recognizes Valentyn. Dmitry mentioned his before. He said that he asked for representation of legal hackers in Ukraine, and he started this division in Ukraine. And he also started up LexNet.io. It's like a legal tech lab, which focused on innovations in legal tech. They founded about year ago, yeah. So they started with chatbots, and also they've made by their team Legal Alarm that Dmitry mentioned before. The button that looks like an Uber, so you make ask for attorney to come just in 5 or 10 minutes. The Lexorium, it's the third project, like a lab also, but it's more educative in nature, so it's like an education session for lawyers who want to make a legal tech project. So they work with design thinking, they focus on case studies, so they have tech experts, legal experts, marketing experts who help teams to start it up. They found it in Odessa also maybe a year ago or half a year ago. So it's quite a young organization, but I'm proud of because it's found in Odessa. It's my native city. We also have law firms which focus on innovations in Ukraine. We have a lot of them, about 10 maybe, but we mentioned also 3. Accent Partners, a company that started. I'm sorry, I started with Accent and then come back to Iskutum. So Accent Partner is the company that focused on innovation in management. They integrated into law firm management such type of management as holacracy. Later you'll have a presentation of Dima Gadomsky. He will tell more. They actually worked with IT company as a clients and with startups as a clients, and they learned from them more, so they decided to work with Scrum, Kanban, with agile workflow, in contracts. And then they decided that holacracy it's the best type of management, and it's like an innovation, and they also tried to make and to develop legal tech project. They recently made a partnership with Microsoft, as I'm not mistaken. The second company, Iskutum, it's a company that was the first one who started legal engineering in Ukraine. So they have a department with IT developers. Dmitry mentioned that Ukraine is one of the top IT outsourcing companies, countries in the world. So we have actually cheap developers in Ukraine, and it makes sense to do so for law firms, to make departments and to develop in-house. So they started to develop in-house and they made also some chatbots. For instance, about a month ago, they launched a patent bot. It's like a bot which helps to register patents and trademarks in Ukraine, but they do it also locally, only in this jurisdiction. And the third company we wanted to mention is Equa. Company also started to work in-house in legal engineering. Also, they started to invest, but not invest, maybe support legal tech startups. They made Equa Legal Challenge. It's like not a hackathon, but it's a startup pitches, and they support it and give them funding. I also pass word to Dmitry. He tell more about communities because he's the representative of HIL, Innovating Justice Accelerator.
Okay, thanks. I was also wondering, have anybody of you been to Ukraine? Yes? Woo, great. We have at least 4 people. That's cool. I hope next year it's going to be more, and hopefully we're going to have a Legal Hacker Summit in Ukraine next year. That's our ambition. Okay, so I'll tell you about communities. It just happened that I'm involved in all of them, that we have basically 3 main communities and accelerators in Ukraine that help to, like a glue, to make all stakeholders come together and interact and innovate together. So the first one is the HIL Justice Accelerator. This is just us in The Hague, in the headquarters of HIL. Just a few words about HIL. That's a research institute, and at the same time we also have a Justice Accelerator. So during the last five years, we've accepted more than 1,000 applications with justice innovations from 79 countries, and we shortlisted 385 of them. And we also, one of our goals is to give access to justice. So this is the core of our business. That's an NGO, so this is more impact-oriented company. So we also measure our impact. And within 5 years, we've been able to give access to justice to 1.5 million people, just supporting bottom-up legal tech and justice innovations all over the world. And yeah, we also have a big goal by 2030 to have covered 30 million people having access to justice. That's like our mission. So, a few facts about Ukraine locally, what kind of impact we've achieved so far. So we've got one justice needs study. It was a huge study all over the Ukraine except annexed parts of it. And it covered about 40,000 families. And they were surveyed about their justice needs, about their justice satisfaction. And there is a huge, like 90 pages report about this. We also ran 2 justice innovation challenges. Last year we had one, and Legal Alarm, I've mentioned them before. They were the winner. And we also were happy to have Legal Advice Middle East at our booth camp. They also presented there. So we also build this kind of connections, right? So during these 2 years, we received 99 applications from justice innovators, and we shortlisted about 47 of them. So that's quite a robust ecosystem, I would say. And we also made 50,000 US dollars in seed investment. Maybe that's not a huge money for US startups, but for small law firms or spin-offs or just guys who have an idea, like 10 to 20K can make a difference. And we hope it's gonna change the situation. So the second project that I would like to present you is legal startup crash test. That's basically also a community and regular pitching events. So every month or two, we gather at some hub. We have a set structure which consists of 3 parts. So we have a content part. We got entrepreneur who's experienced, who can give some advice to other guys who are just young entrepreneurs, right? So this is one important part. So then we have 3 pitches with Q&A sessions. So every startup, we have 3 startups every time. Each of them have 5 minutes to pitch. This is more or less investor pitch deck. And then we have 50 minutes for crashing them, right? That's very important for young startups to get to have their problems, to know their problems as early as possible and try to solve them. So that's what we're trying to do. And the third part, which is also very important, right? Drinking beer. It's also very important because I think most people just coming to drink beer and eat pizza, but then they hear about startups and they want to do them their own. So what we've achieved, we got 18 startups pitched, 275 people visited legal startup crash test, and we ate 65 pizzas and really a lot of beer too. Okay, so this is the legal tech map of Ukraine that I would like to present you. And to wrap up, we also have a video from our hackathon. If you don't mind, can you? Okay, can you click it? Yeah. Next time.
Мы открываем хакатон.
Мы обсуждали, что в юридических фирмах происходит неэффективно, что можно упростить, а какие процессы можно удешевить.
I think this hackathon is fantastic, great energy, lots of teams, lots of ideas. And Hill is looking for a lot of justice innovation ideas around the world, and Ukraine is really buzzing with ideas right now, so it's great.
Мы хотим, чтобы сложные вещи в юриспруденции были доступны каждому человеку.
организовали первый в Восточной Европе хакатон юридических инноваций. У нас есть классные проекты, которые потенциально могут податься в разные фонды, у них есть будущее. Поэтому развиваем данную индустрию вместе.
Отдельное спасибо участникам хакатона. Ребята, вы настоящие legal hackers. Мы в вас верим, because you do what matters.
Yeah, that was it. Thanks a lot. This is our message, because we do what matters, right? Thank you, guys.
Up next, I'm going to invite Rob Spectre. If you're curious about our massages for this afternoon, you can talk to Dan Lear in the back. And the videos from earlier, I think we'll just try and do during lunch. We can do it during the afternoon.
Yeah, great.
Say what? Oh, mirrored. Wow, this is full service, Jonathan. Thank you. I would love it mirrored.
I'm really good at fucking up.
Great. Well, great to see some folks from Kyiv today, right? That was pretty great. You know, last time I was there, I think it was about 4 years ago, and I was walking through the main square, the McDaid, there in the center of the city. Absolutely beautiful. And a guy with a gun actually walked up and held me up, and he said, "Your money or your life?" And I live in Brooklyn, so I thought it was awfully courteous. They gave me a choice. So he held me up. He said, "Your money or your life?" And I was like, "Hey, man, I'm a programmer at a startup. I have no money and I have no life." I'm kidding, of course. Kyiv is an absolutely beautiful city, in no small part to the wonderful hospitality of all the people there. So if you ever have the opportunity to visit, I highly recommend it. So my name is Rob. I'm going to be talking a little bit about hacking human trafficking about for the next 10 minutes. I'd like to thank JMO and the rest of the Legal Hackers crew for having me by for your international summit. It's definitely a distinct pleasure to be able to join such a vibrant community of innovators here in Brooklyn. Obviously, some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today is a little graphic and a little heavy, so if it makes you feel uncomfortable, this is absolutely a safe zone. Feel free to excuse yourself. There's a lot of other refreshments over in the other room. So first, probably the best place to start is talk a little bit about the problem and provide some shared definition for what we call human trafficking. Now, when most people think of human trafficking, they think of Liam Neeson and the Taken movies. This is actually great for me because my Irish mother thinks I'm a Jedi as opposed to a computer programmer. So that's super helpful. But I think a lot of the misconception doesn't necessarily come from the film, right, or the popularity of, or the pop culture depiction of this problem space. I think the problem really comes from the unproductive euphemism that we use to describe the crime, right? Human trafficking, according to the Palermo Protocol, which is the internationally accepted definition, is not smuggling people from one place to another. It's the involuntary labor compelled through force, fraud, or coercion. It's anybody that is working, doing anything without compensation, and that labor is compelled through force, fraud, or coercion. So this could take a number of different manifestations, right? The one that I think would be most common to this audience are folks that are packed up from developing nations and shipped to developed nations and sold either for labor or sex. Trafficking takes the form of sweatshops that produce the sneakers that you're wearing. They can take the form of a uncompensated illegal immigrant who's washing the dishes at your favorite restaurant, or it can take the form of a abusive spouse withholding the wages of the person that they're with. It can also be take the form of a woman willfully engaged in prostitution, finally having enough and leaving her pimp, and then simply walking across the street and getting surrounded by 8 other pimps in a position that they call in the street as out of pocket. So you see the victim in this particular case is trying to cover her face. The reason why she's trying to cover her face is she doesn't want to make eye contact with any of the pimps. According to the mores of that particular subculture, as soon as she makes eye contact with any of those pimps, she belongs to them. Now, it doesn't matter that those 8 guys think that that's the case. All you gotta do is look at that video and that woman holding her face in her hands to know that she believes that's the case. And that is the real definition of human trafficking, right? People who honestly believe they are the property of other folks. That's why I say trafficking is an unproductive euphemism, right? A lot of people call human trafficking modern slavery. There's not a fucking thing modern about it, right? So with a bit of shared definition, let's describe the problem a little more fully. A lot of the reason why it's so difficult to even define human trafficking is because there's not a globally accepted entity that is working on this problem, right? There's no Avengers working on human trafficking. In fact, the data around human trafficking can be very difficult to get. This is a graph from the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime Policy. What you're seeing here is that only 30%, that's 29%, less than a third, of all the nations in the United Nations have had at least 10 convictions for human trafficking in the past year. That is to say, 70% of the 197 member states of the United Nations haven't even prosecuted 10 of these crimes so far. In most of the nations where there have been no convictions at all, it's because it's not even a distinct crime. Obviously, the problem is exacerbated naturally by the globalization of the economy, right? This is a graph that describes some of the prevailing trends of trafficking when there's movement of human beings from one location to another. This particular map describes human beings, but this particular map could describe clothing, it could describe grain, it could describe oil, it could describe shoes. It could describe any commodity that is being transacted in the global economy. This one happens to be humans. But the fact that so much of the supply comes from other parts of the world doesn't mean that the problem isn't itself local in the United States. For the folks that are here in the United States, this is a heat map of all the victims that have texted in to the Polaris Project's Be Free shortcode. There's a small shortcode called Be Free that any victim can text into in order to get connected with local services that will get that victim out of life. And this is a heat map representing where all those victims were from. And once you take a look at that map, it becomes very clear the scope of the problem in the United States. Right? This is not just a New York problem. This is not just a San Francisco problem. This is a Fort Wayne, Indiana problem. This is a Columbus, Ohio problem. This is a Minneapolis, Minnesota problem. And how does that problem exist? How can it persist? Is on the backs of roughly 21 million victims around the world. And those 21 million victims are being milked for a ton of money, and that's what's primarily driving the growth. This is taken from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. It's the main NGO in the United States that works with runaway youth. They described in 2014 that 1 in 6 of the runaways that they were working with, 1 in 6 underage runaways that they were providing service to were involved in sex trafficking in some way. In 2015, a year later, that dropped to 1 in 5. So at the very most base level, and not just over the past decade, over the past few years, this is an area of crime that has been exploding. It's been fueled basically by three things. The first one is a lot of money. This is an example of some of the assets that were recently seized on an investigation from last year. And that represents a small part of the estimated $150 billion, with a B, dollars in profit that human trafficking drives globally. To put that amount of money in perspective, if you took the top 5 companies in the entire world in terms of profitability and stacked them beside that, it would only be a pittance of the amount of money that human trafficking drives worldwide. By the way, 3 of these companies basically represent the entire financial industry of China. And only when you stack those 5 companies on top of each other do you even get in the neighborhood of the scope monetarily of this problem. If you wanted to use something that was a little more familiar, like a consumer brand that you would recognize here in the United States, you would have to take the annual profit of Apple, of Microsoft, of Google, of IBM, of Cisco, of General Electric, of Disney, Boeing, Coca-Cola, and Toyota, and you still wouldn't reach $150 billion. In order to push it over the line, you would have to take the combined payroll of the New York Yankees from 2001 to today. Pretty scary amount of money involved. How that money gets acquired is through super cheap distribution. So if I was going to go into Brooklyn today and try to buy a kilo of cocaine, the street value is about $34,000, right? So the capital requirements to conduct that particular kind of illicit business are high. In order for me to place a back page ad in the dating section of that website right now, it costs me $3. The only thing I need to have is the ability to access Bitcoin. So the capital requirements are low. The amount of money that it generates is about the same. And the third and most aggravating factor that's driving the growth of this particular illicit economy is the fact that no one gets caught. So this was taken from an Urban Institute study that was published last year. It was a great qualitative study that talked directly with 16 self-identified traffickers, all of whom said one of the primary reasons why they were engaged in that illicit trade was because it was less risky than other illicit forms of money acquisition, like selling drugs or selling weapons, right? The prevailing wisdom that no one gets locked up for pimping is further reinforced by the data. So the State Department in 2017 purchased their annual persons in trafficking report. This is an example of the trend line of all the prosecutions that have occurred in the Western Hemisphere from 2010 to today. This is the number of convictions. So if you walk into a courtroom in New York and you get caught with a kilo of coke, you're going to the pokey 8 out of 10 times. If you were trafficking drugs, you go to jail 80% of the time, right? If you were trafficking a human being, it's basically a coin flip. And that's the source of the problem today. Now, in the face of all this data, I can see a whole lot of somber faces, and it would be very natural for you to despair once you start to comprehend the overall magnitude and scope of this problem. But I do firmly believe it's one that can be hacked. And it's one that you all can help with as soon as you get home, and I'd like to talk about that for a bit. So my name is Rob Spectre. I'm a software developer here in the best borough in the greatest city in the world, Brooklyn, New York. I've been volunteering in this issue space for the past 4 years, but since January I've been working on this full-time with some of the agencies that are listed up on the screen. And we'll talk a bit about how you can hack human trafficking. So the old way that you would pursue this particular issue in the dragnet days is the same way that you would pursue narcotics. You would go out, find a low-level dealer, pressure them, get them to flip on a higher-level dealer, and so on until you get to like El Guapo or something. Obviously, that doesn't work in this particular case. However, there are 2 places where you can find a lot of information on this. One, all the services that are being provided through trafficking are marketed online, and they are transacted over SMS, which gives us a great opportunity. So the hack for human trafficking is getting data from the economy's media to disrupt the distribution and supply and build cases without witness testimony. We have a few case studies that I'd be happy to provide. We're kind of running out of time, so we got to move on to some of the other programming that you have available. But some of these are based on using the advertising that's online to provide probable cause to get search warrants for the SMS traffic that occurs. Absolutely no defense attorney has been able to make an SMS transcript cry on the stage or on the stand so far, and that produced a significant conviction. Another trafficker, which was featured on America's Most Wanted, in fact, publicized such online, was using a series of burner phones and Google Voice to try to obscure the origin of the SMS traffic that was occurring. Using a cloud service called Twilio Lookup, we were able to determine which phone numbers were the ones that we needed to tap. That produced an arrest in 2015 and produced a conviction that has yet to be sentenced, but is looking at 100 to life. How do you mute? How do you mute this thing? Oh, gosh. All right. And finally, labor trafficking. This is something that's a lot more difficult to find than sex trafficking. Obviously, sex trafficking has a retail component to its economy that's immediately observable online. Usually, with labor trafficking today, tragically, the only time that you find out about this is when it's entirely too late. But there are some ways that we can use public data to hack this as well. In New York, one of the specific parts of the restaurant inspection code has a prohibition for sleeping quarters being next to food preparation. That's usually a clear indication that the people that are working on preparing the food are doing so under duress and against their will. And all that information is available online. So by doing a quick search of all the restaurants where sleeping quarters were located, we were able to connect our trafficking unit with each of those folks and start working through them one by one to determine whether or not labor trafficking was taking place. No convictions on that yet, but some really, really fun stuff coming up. So in conclusion, human trafficking, huge problem. There are some clever ways that you can hack it by going to the mediums where they're located and grabbing the data around them and using that to produce convictions and take these terrible people off the street forever. If you'd like to learn more, the slides are up there, and obviously I'll be around for the rest of the day. Thank you all, legal hackers, for having me by.
All right. If I'm reading this, we got a sub in here, right? Arlene is not here.
Yeah, 5 minutes, and then everyone gets food, and then at 12:30 we'll be right back on time again.
Cool. So we have managed to catch up. So right before lunch, we do have pizzas in the back for everyone. But before that happens, I'd like to invite Art Chang up to talk about the New York State Constitutional Convention.
Thank you. In case, for those who don't know, I just found out when I woke up this morning that I was actually giving a talk. So here's my slide deck. Can someone kill the video? Let me just introduce myself first. I think this will put this in some interesting context. So I was born in 1963 in Atlanta, Georgia. And for those who don't know, Atlanta in 1963 was in Georgia, which is a Jim Crow state, which meant that segregation was legal. Also in 1963, Asian immigration was illegal. There was a law passed in 1896 which prohibited increased immigration from Asian countries. And so my parents had no clear legal path to becoming citizens until the law was repealed in 1968. Okay. I grew up in Ohio in an all-white community. We were the only minority family. And then I was lucky enough to move to New York, which was my lifelong dream, in 1985. And since then, and I look at the span of my life, in America we've seen the changes in civil rights. We have seen the changes in women's rights. We've seen gay rights, and we nearly got gender equality. And in the last election, we saw this ugly underbelly of America try to turn the clock back to the way it was when I was born. And so I began to think, well, what can we do? So we have to think about what values do we protect in America. I've come to think of America as a place where social progress should be part of what America stands for. The second thing is, in the wake of the federal government pulling back from regulating things that we care about, can the state step in to resist the actions by Washington? And the third thing is, can we continue to make progress in the areas that we care about? So it's very heartening to actually see the presentations that have come before, because so many of the things that you folks have worked on are things that my life has touched upon. I helped start the New York tech community with the venture capital conference that launched in 1998. I sold my first .com company in 2000. I have worked in government since 1990, and actually in the legal field, although I'm not a lawyer. I started an incubator in a large law firm, Greenberg Traurig, and ran that for 3.5 years. And then today I have started or co-founded approximately 15 tech startups, primarily focused on the enterprise space, helping workers achieve higher satisfaction in their work lives, serving people like child welfare, children, and victims. So I'm really proud to be here, and thank you very much. So let me explain just very quickly what the problem is. For those of you who are not American, you're familiar with the US Constitution. And actually, for those of you who are American, that's probably the only Constitution you actually know. The US Constitution is actually a philosophical document that sets the principles of values in the United States. But every state also has their own constitution. And every state's constitution is actually more like constitutions that you might find, say, in the European Union, which are more prescriptive about the values and the laws, and actually direct the legislature and the government to create laws that support the Constitution. In New York, and actually so how do you actually change the Constitution? In many states, like California, voters can do ballot petitions and create initiatives to amend their constitution, which go in front of voters on a regular basis. In 14 states, the only way to amend the Constitution is to call for a constitutional convention. And this means that you vote yes on a constitutional convention, then people run for delegate, and then out of the convention, recommendations are made, and those get put in front of voters. In New York State, the convention vote happens only once every 20 years. The last time New York has actually revisited its constitution is in 1968. And through a bunch of Machiavellian maneuvers, it was voted down by the people because the people who ran the convention didn't want change to happen. The last time the Constitution was substantially amended in New York was in 1937. And most of the Constitution was written in 1894. So we look back at history and what was the United States like? Who was here? Who ran the government? Who had the power structure? And so the Constitution that exists today represents those values, and it has become increasingly anti-democratic in terms of how we vote, in terms of who gets to run for office, in terms of the funding for people who are in office. So New York, as the result, has the distinction of being the most corrupt state in the country as measured by convictions of elected officials. And it is also the #1 state in the country in terms of low voter turnout, which reflects how people really feel. So we're starting actually a new movement called Sanctuary State that is using the lessons drawn from the internet to harness people to become active to achieve a yes vote And by doing so, have people visualize what a new New York would be, help people understand what the convention process would look like, to demystify it, to encourage people to run for delegate next year, and then to bring all of this back into a social viral curve that will hopefully get us to a yes vote in November. So there are three things that you guys can do to really help. Number one is spread the word. I and my colleagues are happy to come talk to any group about the Constitutional Convention and why it's important. The second thing is that we are in the process of getting people, actual citizens, to give their suggestions on what the Constitution should have. We are going to need legal volunteers to help take some of those suggestions and put them in a constitutional framework. And the third thing is we need money. So we are an all-volunteer group, and we are working against a very, very well-funded opposition who goes from state to state in these 14 states, opposing the Constitutional Convention vote to achieve a no, and they've been remarkably successful so far. So with that, thank you very much. It's really been great to be here. If you have any questions, please come find me over lunch.
Great. So we have some za in the back, short for pizza, and if you didn't know. So let's take 15 minutes to go and grab a slice, bring it back to your seat, and then we can keep going on schedule. We'll have our lunch keynote at 12:30. Thank you.